We have answers in the sexual assaults and murders of Hayward resident Theresa Pica and Newark resident Nellie Hicks. On May 21st, 1979, Theresa Pica's body was discovered by 3 of her children in their Hayward home. She was 48 years old. The scene was disturbing to say the least. Theresa had been bound, sexually assaulted, and died from blunt force trauma. The scene offered no immediate clues that would lead to the identification of the person or persons responsible. Hayward investigators collected evidence at the scene, which was later determined to contain DNA, and I want to acknowledge the original investigator in this case, retired Detective Dave Kohler, who is present with us today. However, DNA testing did not exist at that time, and when DNA testing technology became available, Hayward investigators were unable to find a match. Late last year, investigators received assistance and resources from our partners with the FBI. Genealogical DNA technology was used, which allowed investigators to identify Bernard Farnham as the man responsible for the sexual assault and murder of Theresa Pica. Farnham, who was from Oregon, died in a hospital in 2007 at the age of 73. And criminal records show he was convicted of a series of sexual assaults in the Bay Area. I want to thank the Newark Police Department, the FBI, the Serological Research Institute in Richmond, California, and the Othram Laboratory in the Woodlands, Texas, for their partnership, assistance, and commitment to justice and seeing this case through. I also want to commend our Hayward Police Department investigators and support staff for their tireless efforts and persistence in solving this case. This case passed through the hands of generations of investigators, and their determination and tenacity has brought this case to a close. And my thoughts are with Theresa Pica's family. It is my hope that the resolution of this case will help bring them some closure and that they will continue the process of healing and moving forward. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Captain Jolie Macias from the Newark Police Department.
Thank you, Chief Matthews. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm Captain Jolie Macias. The Newark Police Department is proud to be here alongside Hayward Police Department to finally provide closure for the Hicks and Pica families. Today is truly about these families and the resiliency over the past 50-plus years. My heart goes out to the family of Mrs. Hicks that has joined us today, both in person and remotely. The murder of Newark resident Nellie Hicks occurred in May of 1972. She was 59 years old. Mrs. Hicks was brutally attacked inside her Newark home as family members were asleep. It was later determined by investigators that Mrs. Hicks was a victim of sexual assault and died as a result of blunt force trauma. Her body was found by her son, who unfortunately passed away less than 3 months ago, prior to the resolution of this case. In 1979, an astute Newark police detective, Dale Amaral, received a teletype from Hayward Police Department about the Pica murder and noticed a discernible pattern of suspect behavior. These 2 cases have been linked with a likely common suspect ever since. Both of these cases have steadfastly been worked on by investigators over the decades. Over the years, Newark Detective Unit has made continual progress. As technology evolved, the latest DNA evidence and fingerprint capabilities were sent and resent for processing of the evidence collected in 1972. It is essential that I recognize the tenacious efforts of the team most recently led by Sergeant Yamahoma Yoon for their collaboration with Hayward Police Department, the FBI agents of the Oakland Field Office, and Estrella Forensics of Santa Cruz to bring our cases to a triumphant close. Thank you all for your hard work. Your dedicated efforts have the potential to provide answers for open investigations and the potential to bring a sense of peace for additional victims and their families. Chief Matthews.
Thank you. So while these two cases are now closed, the search for answers is not over. We believe Farnham may be responsible for additional sexual assaults and murders in other communities. Farnham was born and raised in Central California and moved to the South Bay area in the 1950s. From the 1950s through the 1980s, Farnham steadily moved through Northern California, and he ultimately resided in Cave Junction, Oregon until the time of his death. Documentation also indicates Farnham was contacted in Nevada, North Dakota, Idaho, Oregon, and Alaska. We believe there may be other families and other agencies looking for closure in decades-old cases. And we have shared information regarding Farnham and his mode of operation through official law enforcement databases. We encourage anyone with information or any agencies with similar cases to contact Detective Rob Purnell from the Hayward Police Department. His contact information is in the media packet that you have before you.
Thank you. It's my honor to introduce to you someone who can share with us who Mrs. Hicks was and how he has been impacted by the resolution of this investigation. Mrs. Hicks' youngest son, youngest of 6, Mr. Dave Hicks.
I'm sure glad she called me the youngest son. Everyone else called me the baby. I want to show a picture of my lovely mother, and this is it. My mother died at the age of 60. Thank all of you gentlemen for your careful consideration and work on this case. It is very deeply appreciated by all family members, and there are other family members. My mom was a hero. She met our dad in North Dakota, and as a matter of fact, my dad had to migrate up from Texas into North Dakota, and they got married. And fortunately for us, they moved into San Lorenzo. And in San Lorenzo, my mom began her teaching career, as I know it, in Russell City Elementary School. And our dad was a volunteer fireman and also a general contractor who worked on several different jobs, including the Mervyn store in downtown San Lorenzo. My mom raised a family of 6, and she worked full time as a teacher. It was a miracle that we all made it to adult age of 18, which is what my mother considered adult. At 18, we were given the choice, pay rent or move out. But we were allowed to visit. All of us boys joined the service at 18, and my sister got married at 18. As time went on, we moved out of San Lorenzo to Newark, starting in my sophomore year of high school. The Russell City Elementary School shut down, and my mom moved to San Leandro Elementary School. Our mom was murdered and raped at the age of 60. A man comes into the house through the back sliding door about 1 o'clock and hits my mom over the head with a brick wrapped in a nylon stocking. And then he draped her over a chair arm and raped her. one sick individual. My brother, Ron, who passed away this past Christmas, woke up and found this tragic and put a cover over her and called the Newark police. I cannot express my gratitude enough for the police department and their dedication to this case. They did an outstanding job, and I have to say that Hayward Police, Newark Police, FBI agents, all of them worked extremely hard to bring closure to our family. We were a family of 6. We are currently a family of 3. And yes, I am the baby of the family. And I appreciate and thank all of you and all of the police department for your service and undying relentless to catch these criminals, or at least identify them. Thank you very much, all of you.
Theresa's daughters have prepared a statement that I would like to share with all of you. First and foremost, we would like to thank the Hayward Police Department and all the agencies and personnel involved in this investigation and the tireless efforts of all to help us get to where we are today. Our mother may now rest peacefully. For us, identifying the individual that took her from our lives has given us comfort in knowing that he is in a place where he can no longer hurt another person. We give our heartfelt condolences to the other family he has harmed. Again, thank you for all your efforts, long hours, and years of hard work and persistence. We've accepted the fact that whoever did this would never come to justice. Nevertheless, we thank God for you and your diligence and for never giving up. We are forever grateful. We can now move forward and close this painful chapter in our lives. Signed, the daughters of Theresa Pica. Thank you for allowing me the privilege of reading this. At this time, we have a few minutes for questions. Please remember to introduce yourself, your outlet, and who the question is directed to.
Absolutely. I think there are a number of cold cases that exist. One of the realities, especially back in the days prior to some of the technology that we have now, is that we would investigate something up until the point where there were no more viable investigative leads, but that doesn't mean that the case is closed by any stretch of imagination. And one of the things that we do purposefully is keep these case files, continue to review them on an ongoing basis, and as new leads are generated, the investigation gets picked up by our staff. And in this particular case, this is a perfect example of that. The investigators went out, they processed the scene, they collected evidence that they believed to be pertinent at that time, not knowing that DNA was even a thing. And here we are 45 years later with the ability to go back and process that evidence and come to a conclusion in a case like this. So these cold cases, while it may seem frustrating and futile for the victims' families, they are being worked on, and it is our hope to close each and every one of these things out.
Where were the suspect's crimes committed in his prior assaults?
So it's my understanding that the convictions that we know of were committed in the South Bay. Correct?
Santa Clara County.
So they were committed in Santa Clara County.
How many?
Do you know how many?
Several that we know. Sunnyvale, arrest, San Jose.
Sunnyvale where?
San Jose.
San Jose.
Yes, sir.
And San Jose, yes.
More than 3?
Do we know a total number?
I believe so. I don't have it.
I believe there's more than 3, and he was convicted and did serve prison time at one point.
Was he still in prison when he died at the hospital?
No, he was not.
Did he have any homicides in his background?
None that he was convicted of. Again, we believe that he was a serial offender, and we suspect that there are more cases that he can be linked to.
If you don't mind, could you please tell us again where you are looking for those other offenses?
So what we've done is we've sent information with details regarding our cases to the jurisdictions in which we know he either resided or frequented, so that they can take a look at any cold cases that they have for the purpose of hopefully bringing justice to some of the victims there.
Quite a list there. Was Nevada, Idaho, would you mind mentioning those again?
Yeah, let me go back to my sheet. I don't have it memorized. I think it was, let's see here. Sorry, I have more than one sheet. Contacts in Nevada, North Dakota, Idaho, Oregon, and Alaska. I think there's a question here.
Yes. Could you describe the evidence that investigators would like to put back in the
Semen, specifically.
Okay, biological evidence was recovered at the scene.
And did you run them through the CDC database? Is that how you matched him up with the victims?
So, in terms of the genealogical DNA process, we're not comfortable getting into the specifics of how that works because we are still conducting investigations using that technology. There was an initial attempt to match DNA evidence from what was collected, in the offender database, and we did not get a match at that time. His convictions were in the 70s, right?
Earlier.
Yeah, earlier in the 70s. So again, there was no DNA evidence or technology to test it at that time.
And I guess people will ask, is it like with the Golden State Killer? Did you go to his trash can or his hair comb or something like that? Did you go to his personal property to get the DNA?
Without getting into those details, yes, it is very similar to the Golden State Killer case. Yeah, and I'm not familiar personally with the specifics of that case, but I will say that, when these things happen, anything is possible, right? And there's a host of people that we looked at as potentially being responsible in this particular case, and a lot of the things that happen through the genealogical DNA process is, you're kind of eliminating people until you narrow it down to somebody that you know is involved, and I think that is the best way to describe it.